Hello and welcome to today's video. My name is Lois and this is Obi, my dog, in the background. So today I'm going to be going through all the books that I've read this autumn, and I've decided to call this video Entering My Audiobook Era because I started listening to audiobooks in the summer, but I've really got into it recently, and 4 out of 5 of the books I read I actually listened to. It's a very different experience than reading a physical book, and I feel like there are pros and cons to both. But I think as someone whose attention span is not that great and is definitely a work in progress, audiobooks have been really helpful because although sometimes it's tempting to just get distracted and kind of lose track and then have to rewind 30 seconds or so, I found it a lot easier than actually finding somewhere to sit and read a physical book for a long period of time. And I feel like with a physical book, it's quite difficult to multitask, and I'm quite used to listening to things in the background like podcasts while I'm doing chores or something relaxing like a jigsaw puzzle or cooking or cleaning or something like that. And with an audiobook, I can kind of carry that over. So let's get started. So number 1, the first audiobook I listened to this autumn, probably in September, was Atomic Habits by James Clear. I think I was partway through listening to this when I made my last video, or it might have been a couple of videos ago. And because it was about 2 months ago that I listened to it, now in reflection I'm thinking to myself, how much did I actually remember and how efficient was this book in helping me to improve my habits? And I have to say, having read a few, though not loads and loads of self-help books, I am a bit skeptical of their efficacy. Because at this point, I'm trying to think, have my habits improved? Maybe it's a user issue, as I may have mentioned before, that I haven't put in the effort to go through my notes and make all the reflections and then intentionally make all the changes. Perhaps that's more my issue. But I am interested in general in how helpful self-help books are. So let me know in the comments, have you ever read a self-help book that's actually changed your life or made an impact? But overall, I did think that Atomic Habits was a great book. I am quite interested in psychology and habits and how the little things that you do every day are actually what makes up your life. So the first point I really liked in the book was the idea of focusing on processes over results. And James Clear argues on 2 reasons to do this, is for efficacy and for your own happiness. He argues that if you focus on the inputs, then the outputs will then take care of themselves. And in terms of happiness, he argues that by having goals and kind of having this idea in your head that you'll be happy once you reach your goals, you are postponing your happiness. Another aspect that I really liked in the book is that James Clear, I feel like, is quite honest about human nature. He argues that instead of helping yourself by being stronger in just making yourself do what you want to do by pure will, you need to be smarter, and that it's more difficult to fight temptation than it is just to avoid it, which is quite a biblical idea. And I really like that myself because so often there are things in my life that I either want to do or don't want to do, and just trying to do that by will alone can be very difficult. So he argues that the best thing to do is to try and use your environment and things around you to make it easier and more attractive for you to do what you're aiming to do, rather than just falling into whatever is easiest. So throughout the book, James Clear gives little tips and ways to make this easier. One of them is habit stacking. So he says, as a formula, after existing habit X, I will do new habit Y. So by using the things that you already do, help you to start doing the things that you want to do. Another one he suggests is the 2-minute rule, which I have heard online before is quite popular, where you just start doing something for 2 minutes. I think I've heard 5 minutes before, because often starting can be the most difficult part. And then hopefully you get into it and carry on doing it for much longer. So overall, I definitely recommend this book if you're interested in habits. After all of our lives are made up from lots of little habits, good ones and bad ones. My only criticism is that there's so many different things that you can change and implement. It can be hard to know where to start and to not just get a bit overwhelmed by it. But it was a very easy to listen to audiobook, and yeah, I definitely recommend it. So I'm very excited to tell you about the next audiobook I listened to, which I actually enjoyed so much that I did get a physical copy, and that is Saints by Amy Jeffs. Now, I listened to this book over about a week whilst doing some painting and decorating, and I was just kind of browsing through Audible, not quite knowing what I wanted to listen to. I couldn't tell if I was in the mood for listening to fiction or non-fiction, and this book for me is a perfect mixture. So it is about the medieval cult of saints. It says on the blurb inside, "A sweeping new legendary of miracles, magic, human frailty and heroic strength, illustrated with over 30 original paper cutouts by the author. Saints' legends suffused medieval European culture. Their heroes' suffering and wonder-working shaped landscapes, rituals and folk beliefs. Their tales spoke of men raised by wolves, women communing with flocks of birds, and severed heads calling from between bristling paws." So I've been quite curious about saints for a little while. Having found my faith in a more evangelical sphere, they haven't been something that I had heard a lot about, but the past couple of years I've spent quite a lot of time in the kind of re-enchantment area of the internet. Figures like Jonathan Peugeot, Paul Kingsnorth have kind of brought back this fascination and interest in some of the old strange stories that people in this kind of materialistic society now don't really know what to do with. So if you are at all interested in similar kinds of things, then I think you would enjoy this book very much. It is laid out in a really nice way. It goes through the different saints' feast days throughout the year, so you have all the different months and the saints organised within them. And the chapters on the individual saints are laid out in a really nice way too. So it kind of begins with this kind of storytelling aspect where Jeffs is either recounting the main legend of the saint or a miracle that is done after the saint's death in their name, and then afterwards she gives some commentary about it as well, so I think that's really nice. In the book, and one of the reasons I wanted to get the book, there are some beautiful pieces of art. What is really nice about Amy Jeffs' work is she uses different kind of medias and disciplines. So in one of her other books, which I'm going to talk about later, she uses a different medium, which I am excited to tell you about. I'll just show you one of the illustrations briefly. This is of St. Alban being decapitated. And yes, there were some saints that I do know a little bit more about or have some connections to with the place. So I visited St. Alban's Cathedral last year and learnt a bit about him. I also enjoy the story about St. Christopher. I was curious about the story of St. Edmund, not living too far from Bury St. Edmunds. And St. Ethelreda was also mentioned a few times, which was quite cool because I used to work in Ely Cathedral. So yeah, there's lots of little connections. Amy Jeffs' work is generally connected to Britain mostly, although she does talk about saints that are not from Britain in this book. So it's just been a really interesting, exciting book for me to read. I was also really excited to learn, just as I was finishing listening to the audiobook, that Amy Jeffs would be coming to a bookshop near me to do a talk, and you could get the physical copy of the book there as well. So I was very excited. I booked to go to that. I brought my nana along with me, who didn't really know what she was getting herself in for. But it was really nice just to see Amy Jeffs in conversation with, I think it was her PhD supervisor. And I always find it so interesting going to these kind of events because you just don't know who's going to turn up. I did feel like there was a bit of a niche there. I think Amy Jeffs is by profession or studied art history. I've not really studied or looked into art history very much, but I don't know, I suppose my interests are quite multidisciplinary or interdisciplinary. And it was very nice because I did get to meet Amy Jeffs at the end of the talk as well, and she signed my book, so I was very happy. That was my little autumn adventure book that was just so atmospheric, and I don't know, just a book that I randomly discovered on Audible has become very close to my heart. So yeah, I definitely recommend this book 100%, whether by audiobook or by a physical book. The only thing is, some of the stories are a little bit rude, so you should know that before reading them to your children. Read them yourself first. So, having really enjoyed listening to Saints, I decided to listen to Amy Jeffs' other book called Wild. I think the first book's called Storyland, but I haven't listened to that yet. In Wild, Amy Jeffs journeys on foot and through medieval texts from landscapes of desolation to hope, offering the listener an insight into a world at once distant and profoundly close to home. They blend reflections of travels through fen, forest and cave, with retelling of medieval texts that offer rich depictions of the natural world. So Wild is also quite a short audiobook. It's only 3 hours something long, so definitely quite easy to get through if you're not so good with longer audiobooks. But what is really nice as well is how in the audiobook version, Amy Jeffs incorporates music and songs into the book as well. So for each chapter she has a song. I think you can find them on Spotify as well. But I just thought it was very creative to bring in that medium, because as she's going through these very ancient, old, early medieval texts, I suppose one of the ways that people would have communicated stories a lot more back then is orally. So I just thought it was very nice to have these songs as part of the book. Now, I was naturally a little bit more interested in the stories of saints, but I still really enjoyed these tales from early medieval Britain, a lot of them focusing on these places out in nature that are not so touched and interfered with by people. So again, if you're interested in reading some older stories that we still have to kind of put back together a little bit or retell in a new way, then I think you would really enjoy this book. So after reading Wild, I had used up all my Audible credits, so I was like, I'm gonna have to look what is actually free on Audible. So I began looking through some classics. I also thought, as it's autumn, maybe I should listen to a gothic novel that I haven't heard before. And I had a look, and they had quite a few Audible adaptations of classic gothic novels. And I found Carmilla, which is supposed to be like the classic vampire novel that predated Dracula. So that was only like 2.5 hours long, and I thought, this sounds perfect. It has a really nice cast. It has David Tennant, really drew me to it. Rose Leslie, who's in Downton Abbey. I love Downton Abbey. So yeah, I decided to listen to it. But one thing I don't think I realised whilst I was even listening to it is that it's kind of been dramatised, so it's not actually the original text. So I hope this still counts as a book that I've read this year, because otherwise that would be a shame. But I suppose it's kind of more like an audio drama, and I don't quite feel like going through and comparing how accurate it is to the novel. I'm hoping it is quite closely. Either way, I suppose the themes that I found interesting, especially when compared with Dracula, is how the vampires seem to go for these incredibly innocent victims. One of the very first vampire thrillers, this audio adaptation follows 18-year-old Laura as she recounts the story of her mysterious, intriguing and beautiful houseguest Carmilla, who is stranded in the forest after a carriage accident and taken in by Laura's widowed father. The girls begin a friendship which turns into a passionate meeting of souls, a relationship of vampire and prey. The story is told through Laura's eyes as she is drawn further into Carmilla's terrifying world of pleasure and pain. I did feel that it's perhaps not quite as developed as Dracula, but if you just want a short gothic novella, it was definitely very enjoyable and atmospheric. So yeah. The final book I wanted to talk about, and actually the only physical book that I read over autumn, is Agatha Christie's The Body in the Library. Now this is the second Agatha Christie book that I've read, and it did take me a little bit longer than the first one, which was The Murder in the Vicarage. And I definitely feel like Agatha Christie's books are quite a light read. They're quite easy to get through on the whole. So far I'm not very good at working out who the murderer is, but that's okay. I do really enjoy the anticipation when you're in the last 20 pages or so and you're trying to work out who could it be, and I'm just kind of like covering the page underneath with my hand so that I don't accidentally like jump down a few paragraphs and ruin it for myself. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. I'm excited to hopefully read a Agatha Christie book with Poirot, because so far the two that I've listened to are both Miss Marple stories. So yeah, I would definitely recommend it if you've not read an Agatha Christie before. I think it's enjoyable. So that's the video. I hope you enjoyed. Have you read any of these books? If so, did you like them? And what have you been reading recently? Let me know in the comments down below. I'm really excited to hear. And as we move into winter, I hope to be doing some more Christmassy kind of videos. So yeah, I hope to see you in the next one. Bye!